Half hour. And what I'd like to speak with you about, which I think might be helpful, possibly, is I know that the majority of the people who avail themselves of this space are not probably involved in businesses that require a huge amount of public speaking. But eventually, no matter what business you're in, you're going to have to personally interface with 1, 2, 3, or even a larger group of people, and that can be very daunting to a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, it's the same thing as computers are for me, to be perfectly frank with you. You know, as numbers are for me, because I'm primarily a word-oriented person. I almost look at words like math and the way that I put words together. So I know for most people that they did a survey one time of the American public what their 2 greatest fears were, and the 2 number 1 answers were snakes and public speaking. Those are our 2 greatest fears. I will tell you that I have spoken publicly, as I'm doing right now, and that I've also stepped on a snake. And stepping on a snake is a lot scarier. As a matter of fact, if you ever step on a snake, if you ever have the opportunity to step on a snake, you should take that opportunity. Find a non-poisonous snake sometime that is rather strong so that your foot will hurt the snake and, you know, the Humane Society come and arrest you or something. Because if you step on a snake, you'll discover some incredible things about yourself. First off, you'll discover that you are much more athletic than you ever imagined. Even if you've done nothing but sit in a chair for 20 years, when you step on a snake, you will discover that you can jump several feet into the air. You know, you will also discover that you might want to go into singing, because you might be able to be a backup singer for the band The Darkness, because you'll have that high of an octave range. Because you'll reach an octave range and make Celine Dion go, wow, I wish I could do that. You'll also realize that you know how to curse in several languages you did not know that you knew. For instance, when I stepped on a snake, I discovered that I could curse in Romanian, Gypsy, and early Latin. So it is a frightening experience. But I know there are probably people who, given a choice between stepping on a snake and speaking in public, would actually go, I'll step on the snake, because we have an incredible fear of it. Part of that makes sense, because the minute you speak publicly, you are then the focus. You are the focus. You all may have attended sales presentations or public speaking presentations or comedy shows. Well, while you're sitting there, you go, you know what I would have said when I was up there? You know what I would have done when I was up there? You know what joke I would have told when I was up there? That's what I would have done. And we can judge the person up there. But the minute you get up in front of people, everything changes. Something changes in your mind. So I'm going to go over, primarily today, in the time that we have, I'm going to go over performance technique, which may help you in the event that you have to speak publicly in a form similar to this, or even if it's one-on-one, when you're trying to convince someone that something that you have is good for them, or to a large group, or even if you're doing Skype, and you know that you're speaking to a large group of people through some sort of teleconference, all right? So there are 3 key elements to public speaking that I've discovered, or that I've learned from other people, that can be extremely helpful when you have to do it. I've broken it down into 3 things, and I call those 3 things, it's the 3 C's. And they're all connection. They're all connection. The first C is connection to the crowd. When you speak publicly in front of people, you're going to be extremely nervous, you're going to be totally focused on yourself. You're in a sense become extremely self-obsessed. You know, when I describe a self-obsessed person, people, I say, tell me what you think a self-obsessed person is. They go, you know, a guy with a big ego, or somebody who thinks that they're really cool, or somebody who thinks they're smarter than everyone, or, you know, is always worried about their looks and they think they're good looking. And that's all true. But an extreme introvert, someone who is extremely shy, is just as self-obsessed. If you take this sort of moral equation out of self-obsession, someone who is extremely shy is self-obsessed as well, because all they're thinking about is themselves. How are they going to look? How are they going to be judged? So, how do we begin to even overcome that so that we can achieve our goals when speaking publicly? The first thing is to have a good intent when you speak. Before you get up to talk to people, before you're going to talk to someone one-on-one or in a small group or a large group, have a good intent. Want something good for them. Believe that that which you are going to present to them is going to benefit them. Think about them and not about yourself. I tell stand-up comics I work with that the minute you get on the stage, it's no longer about you. It's about the audience. Whenever you're going to speak to people, it is about the audience. So if you have a good intent, if you go, I want this person, it's like if you throw a party at your house. You can throw a party, and you've been to parties where you go to a party, you meet the host, you walk in, host goes, hey, that's where you put your coat, not in Arizona, you don't have a coat in Arizona, but this is where you put, whatever, and there's the food, there's the drinks, there's the pool, this is so and so much, and then the host disappears and you have a great time at the party, maybe you don't see the host. Then there's the type of party where the host is freaking out the whole time. It's all of a sudden standing in the middle of the living room about an hour in the party going, I just want to have a good time, and they're crying and breaking shit, and you're going, this is kind of a weird party, because they're making the party all about them, not about you having a good time. So when you speak publicly, it's like you're the host of a party. Like right now, I can tell you're all in a party atmosphere. So, this is so important to me right now. You want them to have a good time. You want them to receive some good information that will be helpful to them. So how do you go about that? Besides telling yourself, I want them to have a good time. But then you get up there, but you still find yourself going, oh, I can't remember my words. And I don't know what I'm supposed to say next. And this guy's staring at me weird. You must be in the moment. Now that becomes more and more difficult for our society as we move along. Everybody in here multitasks on a regular basis. You're talking to somebody while you're twittering, while you're checking your Facebook, while you're actually doing work on a computer, etc. You're doing all that all the time. So the concept of being focused is becoming more and more difficult in our society. But when you're going to speak to people publicly, as I am right now, there's only one thing you should be concerned with. Okay? And that's that woman walking out. So,
couldn't take.
Jay always books me into the best teams. You got to be in the moment. What do I mean by in the moment? It means that you are only focused on what you're talking about while you're talking about it. You're not focused on why did this person leave, why did this person come in, how come they didn't respond as well to what I just said previously, why are they going to respond as well to what I'm going to say in the next few minutes, did I leave the coffee pot on, do these pants make my ass look big, etc., etc., etc. You don't concern yourself with any of those things at all. You must be totally in the moment. You must be focused. Millions of dollars are made in acting classes in Los Angeles and New York, teaching people how to be focused, to be in the moment, to not be concentrating on anything else other than what you're doing right now. So if you can have a good intent for the audience and then be completely focused, you can begin to connect with the crowd. The third thing, those are two subcategories within connection to the crowd, right? The third thing is to be absolutely clear, right, that I just added this to the presentation. The third thing is that the only thing that matters is what's going on in the room at the moment. Okay, you have a good intent, and that you are absolutely clear on what you're going to do, that you are prepared, but at the same time, you're flexible in your preparation. Things will go on during a public presentation that could pull you off of your game. It could pull you off of your intention. I've seen many comics get angry because someone gets up and walks out of the room. I've seen many comics get angry because someone's talking in the front row. The other 298 people in the room are having a good time. 2 people are talking, and it pulls them off their game. Okay? So not to be flexible, to be absolutely flexible while you are speaking in front of people. You have to be able to connect with the crowd. You must be able to talk to people, not at people. Everybody likes to be talked to. Very few people like to be talked at. So you must be talking to people. It must be your goal, even if you don't particularly reach that goal, it must be your goal to turn the audience into one large organism, that you also become part of their organism, that you are talking, that you are not reciting to a group. You got to think of it as if you're talking one-on-one. There was a television personality, I won't say his name because I think he's disgusting politically, but even if you don't like someone, you can on occasion learn something from them that you can then apply. And they asked this particular television personality what was the secret to his success. He goes, well, I'm not talking to a camera, even though he was in television. He goes, I imagine that there's a friend of mine sitting on a couch in front of me, and I'm so excited about what I'm talking about that I jumped up and I'm standing in front of them and explaining to them all this cool stuff. He goes, that's what I see. In television, they call it breaking through the glass. If there's a particular television personality that you like, a news person on one of the news channels or something like, you go, why do I like them? Because you feel like they're talking to you. They're not reciting words to a camera. Same thing applies in a public forum. That you're not reciting to a large audience, that you're talking to a group of your friends. So that's the first connection. First connection is connection to crowd. Second connection in public speaking that can be extremely helpful is connection to yourself. What do I mean by that? Most of us are disconnected emotionally. Okay? That's not just the people in the room, I'm not pointing fingers anywhere, but most people are disconnected emotionally. There are reasons for it. There are good reasons for being disconnected emotionally. You are taught from an early age to be disconnected emotionally. From an early age, you're taught, sit still, be quiet, don't whine, don't cry. How could you say that? Be nice to the grown-ups, behave yourself. You are taught to disconnect emotionally. As you get older, then you have experiences that teach you to disconnect emotionally. This is one of the most common ones. I don't know if any of you have ever encountered this, but you're in a relationship with someone, and you look at them and go, I love you. And they go, how about that? I said I love you. And they go, hot dog. So, now, this hurts you. And you go home and go, I shall never love again. I shall sit in a tower and write poetry, but I shall never love. You cut yourself off. Sometimes even do that crazy thing. Next time someone says that they love you, you never go, I'm never going to tell anybody that I love them first. I'm not going to tell anybody I love them. And all different lesser gradations of that. The fear of being hurt causes you to disconnect emotionally. We live in a society that puts a premium on disconnecting emotionally. You're feeling bad, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling blue, here's a pill. Okay? Things aren't going your way, go to a therapist. Okay? You know what? Go home and veg out in front of the television. Disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. But the feelings have to go somewhere, which is why we have entertainment. Entertainment, whether you like highbrow entertainment or lowbrow entertainment, it doesn't matter to me because structurally it's all the same. But we have entertainment because that is a safe place to feel things. It's a safe place to feel things. There's a reason why you get on roller coasters. It's so you can feel sheer terror without the consequence. Entertainment is oftentimes a way to be able to feel emotion without consequence. You can go and watch a great love story. Go and see a movie. It's a great love story. Have you ever seen? Remember that one movie where it's like the guy's in love with the girl, they're gonna get married, but they have a big argument, and she goes and locks herself in a room. Finally, the guy goes, I'm gonna go up there and just get her out of the room. We're gonna go get married right now. Just goes to knock on the door. Someone runs over the telegram. The telegram says you must immediately report to the Russian front. And even without knock, he sees it and doesn't even have time to knock, so he goes wandering off. She stands there for a long time, listens to the door. He never shows up, and he goes off, and he's fighting on the Russian front, so she thinks that he doesn't love her. So then she marries the creep down the road who really likes her, but she doesn't love the guy. He's got a lot of horses and a lot of land, so she'll always be secure. And meanwhile, that guy that went off the Russian front, he gets his face blown off. He doesn't have a face anymore. And so he ends up in a hospital with no face. And her, because she feels so sad and miserable in her loveless marriage, volunteers at a hospital and sits there and reads to this faceless guy every day who doesn't, and he can't say, hey, I know you, and she doesn't know him because he got no face. That's quite a story. That's actually 2 or 3 movies combined, by the way. But I should write that movie.
Yeah.
I might be able to use one of the offices next door. But you would like that movie. You would be involved in that movie, but you don't want to live that movie.
No thanks.
Yeah. Just like, The Sopranos is a very popular television show. Who the hell would want to live next to Tony Soprano? If you knew you were living next to a real Tony Soprano, you'd be sitting there and go, we gotta move. Entertainment is a way to feel emotions without consequence. Oftentimes in real life, feeling emotions have a consequence that might be negative, so we cut ourselves off from them. However, if you're going to speak publicly, you then become, even if what you're going to do is give a very an information-laden talk, you are part of the entertainment. All of you have encountered information blatant talk having to do directly with the business that you're involved with that drives you out of your mind, that numbs you because the speaker is so incredibly boring, perhaps the way I am right now. And then you don't retain the information, even though it's important. So it's important if you're going to speak to someone, you're going to tell them something that's valuable to them, that you be able to express emotion. That you be able to touch base with your own feelings and share them. That's what you have decided to do, what you have decided to speak publicly, is to share your emotions and feelings with someone else. And if you can do that, they will retain more of the information. You can persuade them to buy your product, to join your team, to agree with your opinion much more effectively than if you just push a bunch of information at them. You must be willing to put it on the line, put your feelings on the line. There's ways to practice this. You know, you can go home. One of the things that we do in our workshops is we have a sheet with a series of emotions on them. Well, you can go home and write down 10 emotions on a sheet of paper, and while you're in your room by yourself, you can look at one and go, I'm going to act out this emotion as strongly as I can. You know, I'm going to do it for like a minute and then go to another emotion. You go to love and act out love, and act out hate, you know, act out anger, act out joy as strongly and forcefully as you want to. You might even have a friend who you trust, who you go, just read me these words. And if you read me these words, I'm going to act out the emotion. Be sure if you do that, by the way, to ask that friend not to interject. Because, once again, if you're really going to be showing really strong love, and go, hey, you look goofy, then you're going to stop doing it. Okay? So oftentimes, initially, if you're going to practice this sort of thing, which we found to be very effective, training public speakers, training entertainers, if you're going to do this, initially do it by yourself. So you become comfortable doing that. So it's connection to your crowd, connection to yourself. And the third connection is connection to the material. You're going to present something publicly. You're going to try to sell somebody something. You're going to try to give them information. You're going to try to persuade them of something. Right? So you're going to have a script, for lack of a better term. You're going to have a pitch. You're going to have a presentation that you're going to attempt to present to these people, and you're going to memorize the damn thing. And the problem will be when you memorize words, you memorize your personality right out of the equation. You and I, all of us in this room, learned how to memorize in the public school system or in a private school system where your parents pay $20,000 a year to use the same curriculum that they use in the public school system. You learned how to memorize words there, and a lot of anxiety was attached to it. You know, a lot of consequence. You must memorize this whole speech on Columbus. You must memorize all the words in this little Thanksgiving pageant. You know, you must memorize these multiplication tables, all right, have them all done by X amount of time or you fail. And memorization became very painful. And there's a reason why it was painful, because the human mind, as it currently exists, is not designed to memorize words or numbers in that regard. It was designed to do that. Over 1 million years of evolved, written language is about 6,000 years old. Human beings have been on the planet for about 3 million years. Unless you're a biblical literist, then we've only been here 6,000 years. But I'm going to go with the earlier one that, you know, we've been here millions of years. But for millions of years, human beings had no written language. Matter of fact, we have still discovered, you know, within the last 25 to 50, 100 years, groups of people, indigenous people throughout the planet who didn't have any written language. But you still have to have a way to communicate. So the human mind has evolved to remember things in pictures, sounds, and feelings. To be able to recall experiences and then use words, then use language as one of the tools to share. There was a little table I saw one time about communication, and that it said that words are 7% of communication. Something like 38% is vocal inflection, 55% is body language. And let's say that they're wrong by a great extent. That words are actually 3 times more important. They're 21% communication. It's still only 21% of communication, interpersonal communication. So when you put the emphasis on remembering all of your words instead of sharing an experience, then you take away from yourself the ability to be an effective communicator. You take away from yourself the ability to be an effective communicator. You have to remember that you are not going to when I first started doing stand-up comedy, way back a long, long time ago in a land far, far away called West Hollywood, some people who were already pretty far along the food chain in the entertainment business were friends of mine, and they told me I was funny, and they thought I was funny, and they would sit around and laugh, and they came out to see me in a comedy club, and afterwards I was in a car. The guy had already done several Tonight shows and stuff. I go, what do you think? He goes, you're funnier in the car. He goes, maybe we get the audience. It wasn't a big audience. We just get him to come sit in the car and drive around. Maybe he'll be funny there. He's a pretty harsh guy. And then another friend of mine said something about when you try to remember the joke, you remember the funny right out of it. Because I put all the emphasis on words instead of sharing an experience. I hadn't quite, the information they gave me was valid, just the way they gave it to me was wrong. Because it just pissed me off. What do you mean it's funny in the car? I didn't hear that. So when you have something you have to present, instead of sitting down and trying to remember all the words, I'll give you a little trick that actors use, method actors use. I studied method acting for a long time. Act out the words. Act out the story behind the words, no matter how information-laden your presentation is going to be. Act it out. Pretend you are, create little backstories to each paragraph. Because all of you have the ability to remember the amount of words you need to make your presentation. What you probably don't have the ability to do yet is to be able to make that presentation in an effective way, because your focus will be on remembering all those words and your personality. The reason that we said, well, let's listen to the guy anyway. He's an interesting guy. He's got something interesting to say. The very reason that we were going to listen to you will be gone. So act it out. Try to picture what you're talking about instead of remembering the literal words. The literal words will come. Any questions? Any answers?
Well, as you're talking about this, Tony, we just had an election, and I'm looking at the two candidates, and it's clear to me that I think the candidate that won followed what you're talking about. You've got his personality.
You know what's interesting is without getting into the politics of it, most people I've talked to, and I have extremely conservative friends and extremely liberal friends. I have friends on all sides. Agree that almost all the wounds that were inflicted on both Barack Obama and Mitt Romney were self-inflicted, and that Barack Obama's biggest self-inflicted wound was the first debate. That he seemed so disengaged that he actually made it a horse race, where initially at that point in time it didn't look like it was going to be a horse race. Looks like he was going to win very comfortably. From that point on, that wasn't the case. In Romney's case, it was a couple of different things. Some people say that the last campaign ad in Ohio, he said, Barack Obama sold Chrysler to the Italians. We're going to make cars in China. It made most people in Ohio go, wait a minute, this is, even people who might have been leaning towards him go, this guy is selling an out-and-out fabrication and also sort of racial fabrication here to scare us. But you can look at presidential debate, and in the second debate and third debate, then Barack Obama was a much more effective communicator. Ronald Reagan was called the great communicator. It's one of the things that conservatives who love Ronald Reagan always point out as one of his greatest assets, that he was a great communicator. The guy was an actor. He'd been a radio star, been a movie actor, not quite a star, but